Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Well, first, I am back from my trip down south for my son's graduation from military basic training. And then I will be heading out. I have another one heading out next week for his basic military training as well. So I anticipate on heading back out in a couple more months for another graduation ceremony. It was a very special event. I gotta say, when I graduated from my basic training, it wasn't exactly basic training. It was a one-station integrated training where you have basic training and you have your advanced training all included at one site. And the Army is doing that with infantry, armored forces. But again, I don't recall a ceremony with quite the pomp and ceremony that I observed, but it was a really cool event, and had a chance to see the current men and women that are being recruited into the armed services. And maybe I'll do a video on that. I saw some things firsthand that both impressed me and quite frankly disturbed me. But more on that later. Now, today it is all-out war. Obviously, many of you have woken up to see that the Hamas organization launched a very large-scale military operation into the state of Israel. We have seen thousands of rockets being fired from the Gaza Strip, which is this locale here, into the state of Israel. We have also seen Hamas commandos crossing into Israel, both on the ground, on motorcycles and technicals. We have seen Israeli fences and walls being blown up. We have seen for the first time ever, Hamas fighters in local Israeli communities dragging out Israeli citizenry, and then in some cases executing them, in other cases dragging them back into the Gaza Strip as hostages. So just yesterday, many people believe that this was not possible, that the Hamas organization would not be able to launch such an operation against one of the most powerfulest militaries on the planet, and that's the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. So how did this happen? What is the backstory? How was Hamas able to launch this operation? Well, for one, it was a holiday. Now, does that give it the okay for the lackadaisical deployment of Israeli forces that did not prevent this operation? No, of course not. Now, I do believe ultimately what happened in terms of the size and scope. So again, no one as of yesterday would have believed that Hamas would have crossed into Israel in force as it has done, and destroyed Israeli tanks. We have seen some of the same strategies employed by the Ukrainians, dropping incendiary grenades, high explosive anti-tank grenades from drones on top of tanks. We have seen that strategy now being used by the Hamas militant group. Now again, how was Hamas able to do what they did? Now, my initial thought is that the Israelis believed that Hamas believed that if it were to launch this type of operation, it would mean the end of the Hamas organization. It would mean essentially the end of the Gaza Strip. And unfortunately, we will probably see a very large-scale Israeli response into the Gaza Strip. Why do I say unfortunately? Well, obviously, thousands upon thousands of civilians are probably going to perish in this Israeli operation. We will probably see additional strikes, and it's quite possible that the war expands with Hezbollah up here in Lebanon joining into the fray, with the possibility, I would not eliminate the possibility, that we could see a large-scale Israeli strike against Iran. The proverbial head of the snake, according to the Israeli side of the equation. But again, if we look at this military operation by Hamas against the Israelis and then ask that question, well, how could this have happened? How could Hamas have been this successful? And the answer to that is, again, the Israelis believed that Hamas believed that if they did this, it would be their end. And they would not risk conducting the operation we just observed out of fear of the overwhelming Israeli response that would occur. But they did it. Hamas pulled the trigger. You have to understand that while this is a small area, let's just measure it. If we measure from going from north to south, it's about 24 miles. At its widest point down here in the south, it's about 7 miles. And from its smallest point, you're looking at about 3 miles. Now, in this area live 2.2 million Palestinians. 2.2 million Palestinians. That's over 1 million males. So, theoretically, the military organizations in the Gaza Strip, not just including those of Hamas, there are other elements as well. Those forces could number, quite possibly, anywhere from 100,000 upwards to 200,000 personnel upon full mobilization. So it's something that the Israelis do not really want to deal with. But at the end of the day, it looks like the Israelis are going to have to. They have an unplaceable enemy in the Gaza Strip. And concentrating the Palestinians in these camps, in these locations, obviously is not going to work. It is going to continue to escalate, and there's never going to be an ending. And obviously, Israel is now going to have to figure out some sort of final solution in its dealings with Hamas. What does that look like? We don't know. But I believe that after the smoke clears, and I'm talking within the next 24 to 48 hours, and we can better ascertain the level of casualties that the Israelis took, both civilians and military. We have heard reports that even some senior military, meaning field grade leaders, possible battalion commanders, company commanders within the IDF were actually either killed or captured by some of these Hamas commando units that crossed the border. Can't confirm that yet, but we're trying to figure that out as we speak. Another thought process about what is happening right now is that Hamas is launching a lot of dumb unguided rockets, thousands of these unguided rockets, to saturate Israel. And in doing so is going to make it easier if Iran and if Hezbollah in Iran were to start launching its precision-guided short-range ballistic missiles against Israeli targets. Now, again, that is going to be the very robust Israeli air defense network to include the Iron Dome against these very precise short-range ballistic missiles that we have seen the Iranians deploy. We saw the Iranian strike after the U.S. Killed the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. We saw a very significant capability by the Iranians to precisely target a U.S. airbase in Iraq. And that same capability, we believe, has migrated to the Hezbollah organization in Lebanon. Now, that hasn't happened as of yet, but it is something that it could definitely happen. And again, I do believe that the Israeli response. Look, Netanyahu has declared a state of war. Normally, when we have seen, be it Israel versus Hamas, Israel versus Hezbollah, Israel versus Syrian / Iranian targets in Syria, we have seen the Israelis call those operations. The Israeli Prime Minister has announced that it is in a state of war. We have heard that there is widespread reservist call-up currently happening. The amount of reservists could exceed 100,000, or essentially 1/4 of all Israeli reservists available. Make no mistake, Israel is preparing for what could be a prolonged and very intense, violent conflict against Hamas. What does that look like? Does that mean that 50,000 Israeli troops occupy the Gaza Strip? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. This example of Hamas and what it did, again, the Israelis believed that their response, the threat of their response against Hamas would cause Hamas not to ever launch such an operation. The Israelis knew that they had that capability. Now, the Israelis also believed that their human intelligence, their signals intelligence, would be able to pick up and identify an operation. Now, they weren't able to do that. They weren't able to do that. Now, is that because of possible external sources helping Hamas? Possibly. That's very possible. Obviously, we have seen some strategies being employed by Hamas, which are new, which we have not seen before, and have challenged the Israeli military. But again, at this point, I firmly believe that it is highly probable that we see the full mobilization of the Israeli Defense Forces, and we see an overwhelming military operation which essentially destroys Hamas. And I'm talking Israeli combat units operating throughout the Gaza Strip. Now, first, the Israelis are going to launch an air campaign, And we're seeing that underway as we speak. And that is going to be ferocious and unprecedented. It is going to be worse than anything Hamas has ever seen. Ever. And I'm not sure at this point what the Biden administration response is going to be. Obviously, there is a lot of talk about the Biden administration giving all that money back to the Iranians. And that is not, obviously, that is going to keep the White House mum. We anticipate that all we are going to hear from the White House is, Israel, you have the right to defend yourself. And woe be Hamas, because hell is coming. Hell beyond imagination. It's coming. So we will continue to watch what is happening on the ground. We will continue to report what is happening in the Gaza Strip. We are watching other areas of the Middle East as well for possible escalation. Stay tuned. We will be producing more content in the upcoming hours and days. As always, it's good to be back, and have a good day.